Hello and welcome to this review of Sunny Brook Kentucky blended whiskey. This was introduced in 1890. All right, 130 years ago. This is a liter bottle. I think it was like $8.49 if I'm not mistaken, something around that price at Big Red's Liquor Store on United States Highway 90 business route eastbound in Orange, Texas. I bought this back in March 2020 on a road trip to Texas, day trip. This one is an 80-20 blend, 80% grain neutral spirits and 20% straight whiskey, 4 years old or more. So the youngest whiskey, straight whiskey in here is 4 years old. I do have one other unopened blended whiskey, Kentucky whiskey, that I'll look at later. All right, so they always have this United States government inspector on the label. So that was their claim to fame. We're like government inspected, and we only sell the highest quality stuff and non-genuine without this trademark. Guardian of quality for generations. So, while of course all whiskey is government inspected, produced under United States government supervision, but that was what they were putting on there. And then with the Bottle and Bond Act 1897, it had an even stricter protocol. All right, well, that's very light. I'll try to avoid any spiders this time. I did a whiskey review here, and then a spider fell in the glass. That was the Cooper's Craft, so never knew. So, big bottle, $8.49 plus tax, Big Red Liquors. When I was over there, I bought it. I was looking around. It was a nice store, and the clerk, the cashier, the lady, the girl, she said, I never sold any of this. I don't recall selling any of these before. And I said, that doesn't surprise me. It's kind of a obscure brand these days, at least, and it's just not something that she would probably. It was covered with dust too. When I brought it home, I cleaned it off with some soap and warm water to make the bottle look nicer. All right, it's very light. Very light. Brown, tan, what is that color? It's just like the lightest amber. It's clear as a bell. Okay, so I think Sunny Brook was an independent company, and then from what I was reading, they got bought out years ago by like American Distillers Corporation or something like that. It was a Seagram's subsidiary, and then Seagram sold it off to Beam Company in the 1990s when Seagram's was selling all kind of brands to everybody because they were trying to bring in some cash. They needed some cash. Didn't help them. They still went out of business in the year 2000. And then Seagram's assets were sold off mainly to Diageo and Pernod Ricard, but not only them. Okay, so let's get into this. I haven't seen the Sunny Cook Straight Bourbon or Sunny Cook Bottle and Bond. They may still be made. You can never tell. They used to show this on the Beam Suntory website, but the Beam Suntory got rid of showing a lot of their brands. Now they only show the featured brands. So the majority of what they make, they don't even acknowledge. I'll try to find a product specifications list on their website, but I don't think they have that like many of the liquor companies do. All right, there's a couple of videos that include this at least, not really dedicated to this brand, but like about inexpensive whiskeys. So, and I was looking at old advertisements for Sunny Cook, all the different varieties, and they were just kind of saying, "Oh, it's really good, and you don't have to pay a lot to get really good whiskeys," sort of their approach. It's nutty. Yeah, it's the main thing of Pat's over there weed eating. It's nutty. It's kind of pungent in the nose from the grain spirits. So just think of a lot of corn, but unlike bourbon, you're not getting the charred oak because you're only getting 20% straight bourbon, which is wouldn't be shocked. Jim Beam cast off like 4-year age Jim Beam that didn't meet their quality standards, perhaps. So then you get the grain spirits unaged. They're unaged, just 80 proof corn whiskey, and it's almost invariably corn. I mean, they don't have to use corn, but that's the cheapest government subsidized one, and it'll kind of taste like straight corn. You know, you can buy straight corn whiskey like mellow corn. Well, that's 100 proof, so that's gonna be more bold. But you can get, I guess, straight corn whiskey that's 80, and those are aged in uncharred new oak barrels. They're like bourbon, except they're aged in uncharred new oak. But these grain neutral spirits are aged in used barrels, if they're aged at all. It's more like they're stored in oak until they feel like using them. They might, you know what I mean? They might blend them in the day they make them, or store them for a while in oak. But they have to be stored in oak. I read that on the Tax and Trade Bureau website. It has to be, they don't call it age, but I mean, if it's being stored, it's aging, right? There's a little wood, yeah. It's there. Even char, little. Some dried, I've said this before, fruit, cake fruit and nectar. You get these blended whiskeys, they're just very, I don't want to say watered down because they're 80 proof like many of the bourbons. They're just thinned out in the flavor. Some people might like that, as opposed to bourbon, which they might find is harsh. All right, taste time. Tastes really similar to Beam's 8-star. Could it just be a relabeled Beam's 8-star? I don't guess it could be, because that one is a 2-year age. It's their straight whiskeys and that are 2-year minimum. This is 4, so it's a different item. It's similar though. There's a nutty quality. It's just a generalized grain alcohol. It's just like grain alcohol. It's neutral. Okay, it's 80% neutral spirit, so it's got a fairly neutral flavor. It's not a sipping whiskey. So just think of like ethanol, generalized alcohol. It's kind of a dry finish. It's sort of lingering though. Moderate to long finish. I wouldn't expect it to linger so much, but it is. Just is. Okay, it's clean. It's fairly smooth. Not real smooth, but it's fairly smooth. It's nothing. Some of these Heaven Hill blendeds, boy, they have some strange flavors, like, and they're off-putting, like honeydew melon. You say, well, I don't know, it shouldn't taste like that. This is just like very thinned out flavor. It's like bourbon. Yeah, so that's a good way to say it. Think about bourbon that's 80% thinned out on its flavor. So you might say, well, you mean characterless. It doesn't have much character. I would not argue with that contention, and I would actually agree with that contention. I mean, is it worth buying? It's worth buying, I guess, for $8.49 a liter, and it's sort of a commodity product, like just something to have to blend, to mix, I mean, to say, make cocktails, and I mean, not real well thought out. When I say cocktails with this, I mean like pouring it in lemonade or pouring it in some Hawaiian punch lemonade flavor, or tropical blast flavor. It's pretty basic. I guess you could make decent cocktails with it. I wouldn't know. How would I score it? Well, for blended whiskey, you want to. I think you really do better going Canadian. The Canadian blended whiskeys have a lot more overt flavors, a little more interesting flavors. American blended whiskey will oftentimes have up to 2% blending sherry in it, give it a little twang, a little twist. This has somewhat of that. It's okay. It's just sort of vacant. I guess a fair score would be about 75 out of 100. Maybe 5 years ago I would have been in the 80s saying it was good. I don't know. Things changed. I changed. Something. I don't know. I just got used to drinking different products. But it'll do. I think it'll do better than. It'll do better than it'll do worse in taste challenges. You know what I mean? Like it'll win more than it loses. And a lot of them will be draws against other American blended whiskeys. So let's say 75 out of 100. It's so-so. A C. It's fair. I wouldn't call it good. But how can you say it's bad? There's really nothing there. So it is what it is. Not too much alcohol legs. It's kind of widely spaced. Sometimes you get a good bourbon, it'll be like little fence boards all lined up. This is big spaces. I don't know what the gaps are for, but all right. So it is what it is. A C, fair, average, ho hum, nothing to get excited about. But then on the other hand, nothing to get enraged about and talk about how garbage it is. I don't see that either. So it is designed what it's supposed to be. I know when they make this, they're saying, make it bland. So, all right, y'all come on down to southeastern Louisiana.